show for all your latest UFC news and rumors. It's Brian Coyle. It's Sean Stanley. It's the TFM Live podcast. And it's now. All right, welcome in. It is the TFM Live podcast brought to you by the FullMountMMA.com. I am Sean Stanley, and as always, I'm joined by Brian Coyle. Brian, how you doing today, sir?
I am doing fantastic. It's fight week, Sean, and I just can't get enough of all of the BS and trash and all of the stuff that's coming out of Conor McGregor's mouth leading up to this fight, because he is selling tickets like nobody else can by taking very interesting approaches and calling out people that, you know, that he's not fighting. They'll make himself more relevant. It's beautiful.
No, he's calling out different marketing areas.
Yeah.
That's kind of what he's doing. He's like, hey, I don't know if you guys watch this, but hey, let me call out you people and everybody. He's like Oprah, but calling people out.
It's absolutely fantastic. If you've never heard of us before, this is TFM Live, the official podcast of the FullMountMMA.com. We talk about the latest news and rumors throughout the mixed martial arts world, obviously focusing in on the UFC. You can find us online at The Full Mount on Twitter, Facebook.com/TheFullMountMMA, at BCoyle11me for me, at SS Sports Dog for Sean. And Sean, this is UFC 202 Fight Week. It is one of the biggest cards of the year, given the fact that the notorious one, Conor McGregor, looks to avenge his one and only loss in the UFC to Nate Diaz. I don't know how well it's going to go for him. We're going to talk about that in the show. We've got some news regarding BJ Penn, John Lineker, and a couple other things. John Cena's going to make his way into the show somehow. Apparently, Conor McGregor can see him. There's so much.
You're telling me Conor
about.
McGregor's the only one that can see John Cena?
Even if he does the thing, he's like, he doesn't disappear. I thought it was like a superpower or something.
It's crazy.
But and Dana White's talking certain things that I really want to get into, because the UFC.com publishing arm was really pushing something. So we'll talk about that involving McGregor. But first, we have to talk about the main event of this week. Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, UFC 202 live on pay-per-view this Saturday night. Give me your thoughts on the fight and what you think will be the X factor going in, because I have some things that I want to talk about here.
I mean, to me, the X factor is that, hey, Diaz has already beat him.
Yep.
He has no. And Diaz just doesn't care, honestly. I mean, when you look at him, he's the same whether he wins or he loses. Maybe he's a little more crankier right after if he loses, but he doesn't. They go to fight. They're not in there for an image. They're not in there trying to sell. They're trying to sell themselves, the Diaz brothers. And throw everything else out the window. All the stuff that, you know how good of a fighter he is. You know what McGregor can do. When you're on that roll to where mentally you don't care, you have nothing to lose, you don't feel like you have anything to lose, you take those chances, and I think that relaxes him more. Whereas you got McGregor, goes the other way. He kind of talks so much that, look, you better back it up.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned that, because for the previews of this fight, and we'll analyze this fight across the board all this week here on the FullMountMMA.com, including a special feature coming up early in the week, where I'm going to go through their old fight blow by blow, essentially, and sort of a cool little live blog project that I've been putting together this weekend. Check for that either Monday or Tuesday of this week on the website. But watching that fight over and over again, you can check it out on the UFC's YouTube page. The best thing about that is they put up those free fights, because it gives you kind of just a feeling of what to expect. And watching back that fight, how many times have we seen McGregor like bouncing up and down, talking crap before the fight, loose? I mean, that before the Aldo fight, he was loose as could be. But
he had nothing to really lose in that fight.
Yeah, and
I think everybody expected Aldo, really, whether you liked McGregor or not. I think for most MMA fans, you're going in that fight thinking, look, McGregor,
all those to lose.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And then when you go in there, I mean, I think I even actually might have picked McGregor, but that's what I do. I go after the underdog most of the time. But
oh yeah.
But you didn't think that, he was loose. And now he went into that Diaz fight kind of like Yeah, he was talking, but once he got in there and he got hit, it was like, whoa, wait a minute. You could see him change in the ring, in the octagon, I'm sorry. Not the ring, but in the octagon. As he was starting to lose the fight, you could see his demeanor change.
Completely. And the way I look at Conor is, like, he just didn't have that not caring sort of thing to him. Like, you can be loose and be ready to go. Like, he's usually, like, smiling, he's joking. When they brought them together for the non-touching of gloves, McGregor's looking at Diaz, how do you want to stand? You want us to do this way? You want it this way? I'm down for any way you want to do it. Diaz just looks at him and doesn't say anything. Mm-hmm. And not because, like, he was scared or like, intimidated. Diaz is like, I don't give a bleep about what you're saying right now. Like, this doesn't matter to me. And we've always talked about the fact that what happened when McGregor would run into somebody that doesn't give a care about all of the junk coming out of his mouth. And Diaz is it. And the fact that this fight is happening so quickly after the first loss is a whole nother story that we can get into, or how Conor maybe shouldn't be fighting at 170 pounds. But this is where we're here now. And is this a fight a must-win fight for Conor McGregor, in your opinion, Sean?
I mean, look, career-wise in the UFC, everybody loses. I mean, as far as that goes. But I think if you want to keep him, and I covered this at the fullmountmma.com on our 3 and Out, but I think if you want to keep him as, you know, this money that you're getting in hand over hand, I think he needs to win this.
I'm totally with you on this. For his mega draw ability, for this unbreakable kind of mantra and this aura around him that he's created, for McGregor to be the biggest draw that you have, he's got to win. He can't lose to the same guy twice.
Nope.
Because that's the whole point. Like, nobody can beat him. But if some dude beats him twice, convincingly, I might add, then why should we care about him proclaiming he's the best in the world?
Yeah, when you lost to the same guy twice in a row.
Yeah. And it was a guy who beat you on, 9 days' notice the last time?
Yeah.
And Diaz is a full training camp now?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a recipe for success. But, I mean, and if he does go out and win, what does it prove? Like, what's the advantage that McGregor gains from winning this fight?
I don't think he gains the advantage, but I think it gives validity to him backing up his talk. You know, because again, you can say, if you want to, and nobody said this yet, so I'm not making excuses for him, he only had 9 days to prepare for a fight where he was cutting to get to 145.
And 155.
Sorry, 155. I'm sorry, I forgot it was Dos Anjos. You know, and then they went up. So he was going up, but now, you know, I'm sure he probably carries himself heavier than possibly 155 as he's cutting down. So as he's cutting down, now he's trying to go back up. You can make it and say, look, the first fight, I didn't go in 100%. I wasn't going to make excuses. Now you see what I can do with a full camp, knowing I'm going to fight this guy at 170. Here's what I did. It gives validity to that.
Yes.
Whereas he has nothing to gain. I mean, you're right, 100%. He has really not much to gain here. And the only, I mean, looking at Diaz in the same way, what is he gets to gain and say, hey, I beat McGregor twice in a row. This is just a big money fight. That's all this boils down to.
And the great thing for Diaz is he's getting paid no matter what.
Yeah.
And like, he can go out and be like, if he loses somehow, then it's like, all right, whatever, I got paid. And he's fighting other big names because he's a big name now, all of a sudden. He's already won. Yeah. That's the deal.
I think the only way that he could really mess up is if he gets knocked out in 10 seconds and it's kind of like, oh, see, it was a sham. Yeah. I think that's the only way. Again, if this fight is, look, he could lose in the second or third round and the fight be, you know, back and forth and everybody's going crazy and this and that. I think he keeps that going. But I think if he comes out there and he gets floored in the first round or early in the first round, you know, I think you lose some of that to where everybody's going to be like, okay, all right, here we go. He got lucky. It was 9 days. You know, again, I think I'm waiting for that to come up if McGregor handles his business and takes care of Diaz rather easily, which I don't think is going to happen.
No.
But if that does happen, how much, the story's going to go back to be like, oh, when he beat him, he only had 9 days. Whereas Diaz only had 9 days too. But nobody looks at that. It'll just be like, well, McGregor only had 9 days and he got caught. I mean, that's ultimately this, I believe, how they're going to try to parlay the story.
For sure. And John Kavanagh, Conor McGregor's coach, says his reputation is on the line in this fight because now that you've lost to this guy and now that you've seen how this goes at 170 and watching back the Chad Mendes fight and the Jose Aldo fight, when you see Conor's bigger than those guys, that's why he's so good at 145, is because he's larger, he's taller, he's got a better reach. And he does the kicks in the beginning of the first round. And I noticed that in the Diaz fight. The first thing he threw, a hard overhand left. Not a spinning kick, not a front kick, not what he does every single other time in any other rounds. He does the kicking to separate himself, to measure distance. Against Diaz, he's like, all right, I'm just going to knock this guy out, and it's going to be it. I'm going to go party. Like, no, this is different. You have to go back to the way it works. And those overhand lefts that drop a Chad Mendes, that drop a Jose Aldo, that drop a Max Holloway, guys like that, they're not going to work on Diaz. So you have to be able to either hit them over and over, which goes to the cardio issue that McGregor clearly had in that fight. As he said it himself, he was inefficient with his energy. For lack of a better word, you got tired, bro.
Yeah.
He's got to be able to manage that because Diaz it's like punching a wall over and over again.
Yeah, I think what happened was he talked himself into a corner last fight where he said, I'm going to knock this guy out in the first round. And then he tried to, seal it, and it didn't happen.
It didn't work. He was nailing some huge shots, too. Conor did great in that first round. Watching back that fight, both guys were having great – it was a great fight to watch. We take shots in this fight because it happened so quickly. The rematch happened so quickly after it. It was a fun fight to watch. We're never going to turn down watching Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz swing in the octagon. It's just fun to watch. But now it's become a fight with so much more on the line, and McGregor has to find a way. I think it is a must-win, just like you were talking before. If you want this guy to be your headliner for the next 3 years and continue to do this sort of stuff and not lose another draw, who the hell knows when Ronda Rousey's coming back? Brock Lesnar, bye-bye. This is – and Georges St-Pierre is coming back. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I mean, that's all but sealed at this point. But if you want this Conor McGregor draw to continue to be what it is, he needs to deliver on this because he put himself in this situation, and now he's got to go and figure it out and see what he can do and how he can attack Nate Diaz in order to win this fight. I think the biggest thing here is, number one, for Conor to be efficient with his energy, to take the words out of his mouth. And I think the kicking game has to be more important here. I get that he doesn't want to kick too much because of the wrestling ability of Diaz. I get that. But that's an area where Conor is strong. That he's got to be able to fight his fight. He can't have Nate Diaz dictate the way the fight's supposed to go. And if you're throwing these bomb left hands like he's been doing, he's got to connect with more of them than he missed, because the amount of punches that he threw and missed in that fight it was just way too many. And I'll cover it in my piece earlier this week. He continues to throw it, and at one point he kind of throws one and then pauses as to realize, wait, this isn't working.
Yeah.
And he gets hit in the face once by Diaz. Real good. And you know it. The announcers know it. Everyone knows it, where Conor's eyes drop.
Yeah,
and again,
the whole demeanor changed.
To borrow a line from McGregor, who's spit out many of them throughout his relatively short time in the octagon, the eyes never lie. He got hit. The eyes sunk. His body all of a sudden kind of drooped just a little bit.
Yep.
It was still ready to go, but you knew wait a second, he's in a different zone right now. Diaz can go get him. He can do this. And then Conor shoots for that desperate takedown, and then he gets rolled up on his back, and it's over. McGregor has to either knock him out and do something no one's really ever done with a dude who's got a better chin than Conor has. And Conor took some serious punishment in that fight too, so you have to give him credit. Or he's got to figure out a way to last 5 rounds with Diaz. And we've never seen Conor go 5 rounds.
And I think if that fight goes 5 rounds, it will be the most excruciating fight to watch.
Why is that?
Because I don't think they're not going to sit there and trade. They're not going to go 5 rounds. They sit there and go trade blows. If he tries to take him down, he's not going to be able to take him down and kind of lay on him and wrestle him for 5 rounds. It's just going to be a bunch of circling.
Yeah.
It's going to be a boxing.
They did a lot of standing and trading.
No, they did last time, and you saw where it went. I mean, I just think, look, yeah, you can take the punishment, but you're not taking 5 rounds of that. You may get a flurry here and there, but in 5-minute rounds, if you only do a 40-second flurry, every round, that fight is going to be, and it, honestly, it's neither one of their styles. So I don't see that happening, but if it does go that way, it could be a boring fight to watch.
Yeah, one more thing I want to mention here: watching the Mendes fight back and watching this fight back against Chad Mendes, Conor McGregor was able to do something that really nullified. That's really something that's been a staple of his repeatedly, and that was cut off the cage, because Conor is able to kind of with his. I mean, compared to Diaz, it's not really an advantage anymore because Diaz has got a longer reach and he's a little bit bigger than him. Cutting off the cage and cutting off the angles to allow it to kind of zone in. Because Nate's great at popping and moving and popping and circling. He did it plenty in the first fight. If Conor can cut off the cage a little bit more and put Diaz's back into the cage, that's the kind of scenario where you kind of zero in on the target, and it's a smaller margin of error when you've got a smaller space to punch into. And I think that is going to be key. Instead of missing all these big overhand lefts and coming in with these uppercuts that don't do anything, if you shrink the target, like if you shrink the area around the target, and you want to be able to kind of just go in there and just, if you can throw things with a greater margin of error and still hit, I think that's incredibly important too.
Well, no, yeah, but if you, like you said, if you can, shorten the K, you have a easier time of hitting the target. He's not going to be able to get away as quickly or as easily, so that's going to help him.
And for Diaz, it's the clinch game. Like, if that happens, you're going to bring them together, and for the majority of that first round clinch that they had, nobody really won it in that previous fight. But if that happens, Diaz has got to either immediately shrink the range and bring them together, go for wrestling on the ground, because Conor, with no energy, was destroyed on the ground. He sprawled a couple times in that fight, was able to get away. But for Diaz, it's kind of take your shots, get into the fight, which is exactly what he did. It's like the first round woke him up, and then go for it. It's pretty much as easy as that. Like, Conor needs to be better. Diaz can do what he did and still win this fight.
Because that's Diaz. I mean, Diaz was Diaz.
That's just the way he works.
He did, yeah.
Who do you have winning this fight? Because I've tallied up our marks from. This is going back to UFC 198. It's not looking good for me, Sean, right now. I'm 10-11 in fights that we've picked, especially going 0-3 at UFC 201 did not help. And especially Matt Brown losing to Jake Ellenberger out of nowhere. That didn't help. You're 15-6, so I'm giving you a lot of credit for continually picking against me and getting them all right.
Yep.
Who do you have in the main event? Because we'll pick a couple other fights on this card, but who do you have in this fight?
After everything's said and done, I think McGregor backs up his talk and puts Diaz down.
Oh, this is good. I'm picking Nate Diaz. I wonder what's going to happen. This is I just don't think the matchup works for Conor.
I don't think the matchup works, but I think with this full camp though now, and again, I'm going on this whole thing that I kind of set up earlier, whereas, he was messing with his body and doing things. He had 9 days to kind of jump. But I'm hoping.
I'd love to see it just for narrative's sake, for story's sake. We don't know what's going to be next. We'll talk about that in a little bit of where both men will go.
Yeah.
After this fight.
Well, I think I know where McGregor probably won't go.
And it's funny because where somebody wants him to go.
Yeah.
But I'm taking Diaz. You're taking McGregor, and we'll see how it all shakes out on Saturday night.
I can tell you this: I'll be 16-6. You'll be 15-12.
Wow. I'm not even. Well, if I'm 15-12,
oh, sorry, 10.
Me like,
what are you? 11-10 or 10-11?
I'm 10-12. I'll be 10-12.
So you'll be 10-12. So, I'm sorry, my fault.
Oh boy. But it will be a fun night for sure. Just the watching back the crowd and watching back the atmosphere in the MGM. Now it's in the T-Mobile Arena, which supposedly there's still plenty of tickets available, which I can understand. It's better to watch the fight at home sometimes, and especially the Irish can't fly over
every
5 times. This is like the 4th or 5th time that they're doing this fight in Vegas in a year. I think it's the 4th time for McGregor. And I'm no expert in the financial realm of things, but I know a flight across the Atlantic itself is pretty expensive. Now, a flight across the Atlantic and then across the country, so more pieces onto that. Eventually, I think they've soaked as much as they could out of the Las Vegas market.
Yeah, I think they got to start branching out a little bit. Make territories.
I mean, the East Coast. But there's a brand new territory that opened up. So
yeah, I think they should have, but they didn't want to. They didn't want to wait that long to get this fight there. That's the problem. They're looking big money right away. Here it is, easy.
Yeah, so I think it will draw pretty well. We've got plenty of stuff to talk about on this week's show, including Dana White's first comments about the future of Conor McGregor, Tyron Woodley, and Stephen Thompson, which I found very interesting. We've got fight news regarding John Lineker at bantamweight against an opponent that I think is literally one of the perfect matchups for him to kind of prove himself going forward. BJ Penn still suspended, but now has his 3rd rebooked fight, and against somebody much better than his first 2 opponents. And then, of course, we have to go back to Conor McGregor because he just makes that much news where you have to. About his, I guess his latest rivalry, I guess so to speak. I don't know.
You can say that. I think so. Yeah.
Partnership, and then there's also fight news replacements regarding UFC 203's co-main event. So we'll talk about that and a whole bunch of other stuff when we come back here on TFM Live, the official podcast of the FullMountMMA.com.
For all your latest news and rumors of the UFC, go to the FullMountMMA.com. Now back to the TFM Live podcast. Here's Brian Coyle and Sean Stanley. All right, we bring it back in. I'm Sean Stanley. He's Brian Coyle. Check us out on Twitter at the Full Mount, at BCoyle11, at SS Sports Talk. Once again, it is the TFM Live podcast, officially brought to you by the FullMountMMA.com. And Brian, the news just keeps coming out of the UFC.
It's incredible. I mean, there's no fights this week, which is good because I think we needed a break after the marathon. Oh yeah, by the way, we're gonna marathon 6 more weeks going into the football season starting next week.
Yeah, they got to get them in now. Get them in now.
Yeah, why not? Because come playoff time, the eyes might be on something else. Dana White had some comments to UFC.com that I think are very appropriate for us to talk about, Sean, regarding Conor McGregor, Tyron Woodley, Wonderboy Thompson, Jose Aldo, the Diaz brothers, a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm going to read you the headline, and then I'm going to read you the comments. And I'm going to ask you if the headline does not exactly match the comments here. So the headline is Dana White, McGregor will return to 145, Woodley to face Wonderboy. That's the headline, right?
Yep.
Here is what the article says. Win or lose against Nate Diaz at UFC 202, Conor McGregor will return to 145 pounds to defend his featherweight title, UFC President Dana White said on Thursday. Quote, I fully expect Conor to come back and defend his 145-pound title. White, end quote, White told UFC.com in an exclusive interview. Now, Is something different with that quote compared to the headline? Does that sound like somebody who wants something to happen compared to this is going to happen? Or is it just me?
I mean, look, I think White's, you got to think about it as a business, right?
Yes.
So I think that's what he wants.
Of course that's what he wants. That's what a lot of people want. But it doesn't seem like, to me, as much as people ran with that story on Thursday and saying, oh, the next thing for McGregor is 145, it doesn't seem like to me that's set in stone by any stretch of the imagination. Especially when John Kavanaugh comes out and said he would like him to fight at 155 first before going back down to 145, which I agree with, given the fact that you're going from 170 to 145 in between one fight, and if they're trying to push him on the MSG card or whatever they're trying to do, at least give him time to get back to that, down to that weight again, if he's ever going to fight.
When is the MSG card?
That'd be November.
November, right. We're in August. Pretty much the middle of August. By the time they fight, it'll be the end of August, right?
It's 3 months away. August to September, September to October, October to November. We're 3 months away. November 12th is UFC 205 at Madison Square Garden. I don't think McGregor should fight on that card.
No way. No way.
No
I mean, because, again, unless he gets that 10-second, the Aldo knockout, then I could say okay. But other than that, there's no way. This is going to be a war. I mean, regardless.
Yes,
going
completely.
in this fight, I mean, no matter who wins, they're still going to punch each other in the face and do whatever they got to do. But, Dana White's thinking, hey, look, I can't just say, hey, he's not going to go to 145. Even if I know he's not going to 145. We've seen this. We talked about it off air a little bit ago. Dana will tell you this isn't going to happen, knowing that in about 35 minutes we're going to play a video that's saying exactly what I'm not saying.
Yeah, it's a tough spot for him to be in, and this was the second one, and it ties into this whole thing. McGregor, welterweight, the Diaz brothers, beautifully. It even wraps up into a nice little bow regarding Georges St-Pierre, which we'll talk about. Dana White said, I think that Nate Diaz feels his brother should have the fight at 170 regarding the title fight against Tyron Woodley, because Nick is obviously coming off of suspension from marijuana. But Nick is not going to come back and fight for the title right away. There are other guys deserving of a title shot. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is going to fight for the 175-pound title, and then we'll see what happens with Nick and Nate. Now, basically what the headline says is Woodley will face Wonderboy Thompson for the 170-pound belt. What the quote says is that Wonderboy Thompson will fight for the 175-pound title. Doesn't say Woodley in that quote, does it?
No, just that he's going to fight for the title. It doesn't say win.
No, it doesn't. It
says he will. Well, hey, guess what?
I mean, good for him.
That's like me coming out and saying, hey, I may fight for the UFC heavyweight title. Don't say I'm going to fight for it anytime soon.
And it wraps up beautifully into Tyron Woodley's tweets following the release of this story. He said on Twitter, funny how there is an official fight announcement and I, number one, haven't spoken to anyone. Number two, agreed on an opponent or date. Number three, signed about agreement, crying emojis. So, Woodley also tweeted out that day a text message conversation. The text message conversation, supposedly, if this is correct, if this is actually correct, we haven't been able to verify it. GSP is the person he's texting with, and Woodley texted him, "Thanks for the kind word. You are a competitor and the best we have seen. If you're coming out of retirement, it would be an honor to compete. We could sell the bleep out of this fight. If not, no worries. I'll push for Nick. Either way, I wanted you to know my request was from respect." St-Pierre replied, "Congratulations, Tyron. Thanks. It would be my honor." And then Woodley responded, "Let's break the UFC bank," with a couple of emojis. GSP with a laughing emoji, a thumbs up. And he said, "Rap with you soon." I tell you that to tell you this. In an exclusive interview with BloodyElbow.com, Georges St-Pierre stated that he's starting the USADA process for an eventual UFC return. He said, quote, in this interview with SB Nation's Bloody Elbow, I'm starting the USADA process to be tested. I'm starting it August 10th in Las Vegas. Because to be eligible to fight, you need to be tested. I don't want an exception because I was very outspoken about PEDs. It would be bad for my reputation if I would have an exemption, a la Brock Lesnar. I don't want to have a free pass. I want to be like everyone else. That's why I'm starting the process August 10th. I don't have any fight yet, but it's going to happen now because I'm getting tested. If I'm getting tested, it's for a reason. 4 months have to pass following the USADA process for a fighter coming out of retirement, unless your name is Brock Lesnar. GSP will be eligible to fight on December 10th. That would put him out of the Madison Square Garden range and into what I like to call the Montreal card that hasn't been announced yet, that probably will happen either in Montreal or Toronto, somewhere in Canada on New Year's Eve, starring Georges St-Pierre and Tyron Woodley. That's what I think is going to happen. That's my Dan Henderson, Michael Bisping pick for you, if you will, there, Sean.
No,
what do you think about this whole mess regarding 170?
Look, Woodley said it when he got the belt. You know, I'm going for money.
Fighting you.
I'm going for money. I'm going for the money. I'm going for big money,
which I love.
I mean, it's good, but then it just, to me, why have rankings then? Why have this? What does they mean? Yeah. What do they mean? Nothing. That's great. Okay, you put them on paper, but if you're number one, that don't mean your next title shot, which it should mean, but it doesn't anymore. Because everybody's going for these big money fights. You see everybody moving around. I still can't believe we ain't seen Cruz Johnson announced.
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at it is this. The UFC has put itself into this corner where money fights are bigger because the guys don't get paid enough.
Yeah. Because
of outside sponsorships going away with the Reebok deal. And that's where you get these fighter unions trying to join up, as we saw one this week, which, I mean, they had the backing of major player associations throughout sports, but their logo was an octagon, which is obvious trademark infringement, and there were multiple grammar mistakes in their first press release. Like, nobody's going to take these fighter unions seriously because guys are going to do this. Well, no, because they're going to go for the money.
It's not that either, though, but you're going to have, for everybody that wants to join the union, you're going to have the 10 other guys that don't.
Yeah.
And it's just
like, I'll take the fight.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, you guys sit over there and you do your union thing. I'm going to be over here fighting.
Yeah. It's a different game.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those games where, look, unless you have the 100% of everybody as they're on board, it's not going to work.
You're absolutely right. And, I mean, as much as Wonder Boy deserves the title shot, this is not how the UFC – this is a new landscape. And these rankings voted on by these journalists, some of them who I don't know how they're on them. I don't know how they'd be able to do this. I don't know where they come from, or they're blatant homers.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not saying that the rankings are 100% accurate either by looking at it, going through them. But I guess my question, it would be this, okay? If I'm a fighter and I'm going in and I'm doing everything you're asking me to do and I'm winning these fights, but now the champion won't fight me for my chance to make my big money fight.
Yep.
Who's going to put me in a big money fight? Who's going to pay me that money? Because I've beat everybody you put in front of me to get to this option, and I'm still not a draw for this guy to make more money. So now he's going to fight somebody else to where I'm not going to be able to make any money again.
I would be livid if I was Wonder Boy, and not at Woodley, at the UFC.
Yeah.
Because they've put you in a position where you've done everything that you're supposed to do. And if he goes, wait, I still don't get my title shot? Why am I doing what I'm telling you, what you guys are telling me? Why am I not calling out guys that I want to fight? Why am I not trying to build these money fights? And he's standing there holding the bag while Woodley's like, with good reason, I can fight GSP?
Yeah.
I want to fight GSP.
This guy called him out on Fox Sports 1. Hey, I want the next shot. Nah, I want to go for money.
Nah, bro.
I mean, it's like...
That's literally what he said.
Yeah, it's like... and you saw Thompson's face like, oh, that didn't go out as I wanted.
Yeah. It's like...
Not even like, hey, get in, no, some kind of smack talk. It was just, no, I want money.
It was like, and I feel bad for like somebody like Wonder Boy because he was obviously egged on by Cormier and what was it, Cruz on that. Like, but like you have to be able to adjust to this thing, and he looks dumb. It's like, hey man, I'm the best that this division has to offer. let's fight. And Woodley goes, I don't care if you're the best. I can fight GSP or Nick Diaz and sell more pay-per-views.
Yeah.
And I want to do that. And maybe I'll fight you after I fight one of those and get my money.
Maybe. Then, he even said maybe. Maybe I'll do that. To me, it's just, you sit here and you look at Dan Henderson. Look, yeah, he's, deserve a title shot? Really?
No, not even close. But is that going to sell because of their history? A little bit.
Well, plus
not as much.
But it's Bisping in his hometown. None of the other contenders are going to fight the champion in his home turf.
Yeah.
To me, I'm not going to go fight. Boxing, things like that, you always got your things where you can work it out to where that way. But if I'm a UFC fighter, I'm already the challenger, and I'm working. Why am I going to go into that house of a crowd when I know I can wait and probably fight in Vegas, which I guess you could call neutral turf?
Technically, yeah, I guess. But it's funny because we always talked about boxing, and the problem with boxing is there's so many promotions and there's so many different belts that none of them mean anything. And one loss destroys a guy's career, even though it shouldn't, and it destroys their drawing power. In the UFC now, we used to have this thing where guys would work up the ranks, and there you go. Now it's different because of an ill-fated business decision that's caused huge ramifications when it comes to making fights. And it really does stem back to this. The sponsorship money.
Well, it does, because people need them. They need
the
money. You got guys that got to pay for camps. Look what happened. Who was it?
Well, McGregor said he spent $300K on this camp, which is insane.
John Jones. They said they missed out on like a six-figure payday because now nobody's making the money because Jones got suspended.
Yeah.
That's what they're paying to get to these fights. Yeah. They're not making that.
No, it's not even the case at all. And so this is the kind of thing that they've created their own problem, and you're going to continue to get. You can have Dana White come out and say these things, and that's all well and good, and that would be cool and all, but that isn't the way things work. And when we see Tyron Woodley GSP announced in December, or Wonderboy Thompson has to fight somebody else again before he gets Woodley, and McGregor skips over Aldo and goes to somebody else, like a big name, this is what you've created. You've created this monster, and we don't know how it's going to shake out. Now, sometimes you do get cool match. Sean Shelby and Joe Silva do a terrific job at what they're given with making these matchups. On 202, we have... sometimes it just works itself out. Rumble Johnson and Glover Teixeira, they're 1-2 because of the fact that Jones screwed up. This is essentially an eliminator for light heavyweight at the title for a title fight against Cormier. These guys 1-2. It just works. Cowboy Cerrone, who wants to fight every month, is fighting Rick Story at welterweight. Those are cool fights. John Dodson and John Lineker are headlining a card in Portland on October 1st. That's an amazing fight because you get two former flyweights who decided, Dodson basically decided he couldn't get beat by Demetrius Johnson anymore, so he moved up. Lineker couldn't make weight at 125, so he's at bantamweight now. And those two guys are going to have a war in Portland on October 1st, which I'm psyched about. But matchups are made so that are best for the fight fan, and then when you get to these upper echelon guys, it's going to be about money first. And once they make their money, like you said, they'll move on, and then they'll follow the rules.
Yeah, but then also would I'm sorry to cut you off, Brian.
No, yeah,
but
no.
How many times have we looked at these fights and we sit, and again, we're not necessarily the casual MMA fan. We're into MMA. We follow it. We like the matchups. We like things. How many times have they done these matchups? And then once you get there and the fight happens, you're like, that didn't really live up with the mid cards.
Yeah,
they don't live up to the thing, and then you're going, all right, this is a guy I thought could be the next star, and now watching this fight, and again, and I understand where the money comes into this all, but style wise on paper doesn't always roll out to what they do in the octagon, because again, these guys are trying to make it, and to them, making it means winning. So to them, I don't care. They don't care, to some of them, whether it's a decision win or a knockout win or a submission win, to them it's a win. They move up in the rankings. They're moving closer to that title shot. To get that name made, you can't make it to the top anymore unless something surprising happens. Look at what you got today.
It's incredible because take a look at this. UFC 203, right? Fabricio Verdum, Ben Rothwell. Rothwell suffers a major knee injury in camp. He's pulled out this week. Travis Brown is fighting Fabricio Verdum now. Even in your best efforts, when you put it together, a Rothwell-Verdum matchup, it's fresh, it's new. Then you pull out, and then Travis Brown, who's been probably having the worst times of his career, is now going. It's a rematch of from a couple years ago where Verdum just completely destroyed him. And now that's your co-main event of UFC 203. So even when your best plans are laid out, it still doesn't work because guys get hurt. It's like the amount of times we've had main event and co-main event changes.
It wouldn't be a pay-per-view or an event without one of them getting scratched or changed.
It's absolutely crazy. The amount of times where you see guys. Here you go. This is incredible. Mike Bone of MMA Junkie tweets this out every single time there's a main event or co-main event change. Ben Rothwell's injury withdrawal from UFC 203's co-headliner marks the 29th main or co-main event change to the UFC calendar so far this year.
Yeah.
The UFC has now experienced a total of 71 main or co-main event changes to its fight cards dating back to January of last year. This is a tough sport to figure out fights for, especially when guys are going down left and right. So we understand, just bring it all back to Woodley, with all those changes, go for the fights now. You can, it's like that old booking.
Yeah, but
thing.
also, from that standpoint, how do you know that fight's going to actually happen?
That's the thing. You have to book it and hope it does. Because if not, then it's okay. Then you always have to have a backup plan now at this point. You have to have Wonder Boy on standby if GSP gets hurt or Woodley gets hurt or something like that. It's a different kind of thing.
Yeah, but then when you're doing that, and again, I know these guys train very hard, okay? And that's part of the problem with the it's unlike any other sport. You can't just, in football, you can go, okay, pads only, we're not hitting today, through the week practice, this and that. To get the training that you need in mixed martial arts, you have to go full speed. There's no, you can, as you're doing some of the drills, you can kind of go through the motions, but when you're in there sparring and training, you're going maybe not 100% like you would in the octagon, but you're not really holding a lot back. Because when you do, that's usually when some of these mistakes happen, because somebody slips, somebody comes down on an ankle, a knee, things like that.
A rib.
Yeah, it happens so often. And there's no changing that way when you look at it, because it's like I said, like in football, they said, you know what, you get what is it now, one padded practice per month or something like that during the season.
Insane, and it's probably actually worse for the players, believe it or not.
No, it is, because once you get in the game,
practices and NFL camps and all this sort of stuff, it's the lack of practice time now leads to sometimes more injuries.
Yeah.
So you have to find, it's like a pitcher's arm. Do you throw them too much, or just to make sure their arm's used to all that stuff? Do you throw them a little bit and then all of a sudden you push them and then it breaks? It's crazy. Like trying to figure out the perfect training regimen. I don't envy these guys at all.
No, and I don't envy the UFC matchmakers by trying to put some of these fights together. But I think where they went wrong, and I'm gonna take this to me, is when you come out and you say, and I understand it's the old management, no fighter is bigger than UFC, but then every action that you do shows that they are.
Yeah, absolutely,
and they know it.
Yeah, so the UFC needs to realize this is the product that we put on.
Yeah,
and we have to book these things like we don't know if they're ever going to happen.
And you can't tell me that they can't.
That way early, and then look what happens.
Yeah.
Like you still get these things, and it goes back. It segues perfectly in what I want to talk about next. It goes into that old wrestling thing. Like if you're trying to build up a guy, and you think he's almost there. why not just throw him in? Because you don't know if somebody's going to get hurt. If something's going to happen, you're going to miss out on an opportunity to have a match or something like that. And I tell you that to tell you this, because Conor McGregor is really getting ready for his WWE career. Man, I don't understand. I mean, I understand it because he's literally trying to sell tickets by just taking shots at wrestlers. But I found this to be hilarious. And Sean, I know you got a kick out of this. Conor McGregor took shots at wrestlers last week, saying that they're soft and there are only a couple dons in the wrestling game, as he liked to said, with Vince McMahon and Triple H and everyone else kind of sucks, essentially, is what he said.
Yeah, imagine he named all the upper management, the people that would hire him as dons. Just throwing it out there. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. He said on Friday at his own media day that he held at his own gym in Las Vegas, which, come on. What's the main guy? John Cena, the UFC featherweight champion, said he's 40 years of age. He's walking around in a luminous orange t-shirt and headband talking about nobody can see him. We can see him right there. He's a big, fat, 40-year-old Mr. Olympian, bleep and bleep. That it's one of the funniest stories that I've been following all week is Conor McGregor takes aim at fill-in-the-blank wrestler. Mm-hmm. Other than the fact that this is obviously a ploy to sell tickets and get more eyes on the fight a week before the fight, what are your thoughts on Conor McGregor doing all this?
Look, obviously he's trying to sell some tickets because you're going to get these John Cena fans that are going to be there to watch him lose. So they can cheer. And I don't know necessarily if he's going to sell to John Cena fans because most of them are under 8 or 10. So they might not be able to buy tickets to the event. But, it's a smart move. Again, is it a calculated move? Is it need we say a Dana White, Vince McMahon type move that's going on here that just is being orchestrated by McGregor?
Like he said.
Because he's not calling out like any other wrestlers. He's making it WWE wrestlers.
And I quote, like I said, quote, no disrespect to the dons of the game, the McMahons. Vince is a bleeping legend. They wrote Vinny off a few years ago when he dropped from the billions, and then he rose back up, and now he's back in the billionaires club. What he's been able to do with the bunch of dweebs that he has over there at the moment has been phenomenal. I respect him. Then, of course, the OGs of the game, The Rock, the Stone Cold, they're cool bleeping bleeps. Even Ric Flair is a cool bleeping bleep.
But Ric Flair did call him out, too.
Oh, he did. He did, too. So this is clearly... And I apologize for channeling my inner Stephen A. Smith. It's clearly a gimmick. It's incredible. I mean, the fact that he's doing this a week before the fight and is able to still be this wondrous marketing machine while still having to focus on this fight I love it.
No, yeah, but the one thing is, no matter how much they say their fan bases are so different. Their fan bases are so similar. It's
completely.
You're probably not going to have the kids in the UFC fights, which is what wrestling kind of. But they target the kids. You know why? To sell merchandise, and then the kids want to come to the wrestling show, and guess who has to come with them because they're coming to the wrestling show? The parents. And then guess what happens once they get in that front door? There's 600 merchandise booths everywhere. To guess what? It's all part of that thing. And look, I think UFC wants to get into that part of it, but you can't. Completely. You can't market that to kids because you're fighting. They got to try to figure that out. So now it's, we call WWE fans out. Then the kids will get mad. So then the parents hopefully will get mad, and somebody's going to go buy tickets and go to the show.
And the greatest thing is, the Reebok jerseys and all that stuff that the UFC started to try to sell, unless they spelled the names wrong on the back of the jerseys, or Anderson the Spider Aldo, if you will.
There you go.
That fun.
They call him like the mosquito or something.
It's obvious that they're trying to take parts of each other's businesses, and I mean the amount of Brock Lesnar crossover. If Brock had not tested positive for estrogen blockers, we'd be in a whole new world when it comes to the UFC. Like if he was still fighting, but you've seen time and time again WWE take advantage of MMA stuff and mention MMA things. When you look at guys like Shinsuke Nakamura and Lesnar and previous fighters, I mean Ken Shamrock back in the day.
Dan Severn was an NWA heavyweight champion when he was first coming through UFC.
Steve Blackman, what was he, the Human Weapon or something like that? Like,
world's most dangerous weapon.
Yeah. Like they've obviously taken parts of
Tank Abbott.
the MMA game. Yeah, Tank Abbott. Like, and now you see McGregor, who's created this larger-than-life personality, and the UFC has built themselves on larger-than-life personalities, a la WWE wrestlers. Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania a couple years ago, standing toe-to-toe with The Rock across from Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. It's so incestuous, these two businesses together. It's ridiculous, but nobody admits it. But it totally is. So when we see Conor McGregor praising the McMahons and praising Triple H and The Rock and then taking shots at guys who are currently in the business, there's a reason for it.
Yeah. And you see, he went after Cena, who probably won't be there a whole lot longer. He didn't go after none of the younger guys. He didn't go after Rollins, didn't go after Ambrose. He stick it with Cena, which I think they're trying to build up something there. Just keep an eye on that. Just all I'm saying.
Because Cena is, of course, the biggest name still in professional wrestling.
Think about this.
Even though he's not
WrestleMania,
around,
Conor McGregor versus John Cena.
Nope. No way. You can't
Well,
sell me that
you've already got
tried.
the Big Show versus Shaq, so why not start adding more?
Well, see, both of those men are the same size. When you look at Conor McGregor, who's soaking wet, 180 pounds, it's hard to sell me from a professional wrestling
Hey, they brought
standpoint.
Floyd Mayweather in, and he KO'd the Big Show in WrestleMania.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But one of the things I was going to say was, too, is that, like, look at what they're doing with, like, Chael Sonnen right now. You know, he's like a wrestling analyst on with Jim Ross on that new Japan show that they do every quarter.
And Sonnen's supposedly coming back for he's entering the USADA process and possibly contemplating a UFC return. But it was basically more like, I'm using all my supplements and I want to see if I get tested positive for it or not. Essentially, to see if I can take what I take and still, need to be able to do something like that. So the fact that we've been talking about McGregor this entire show just goes to prove how big of a deal he's created himself into and how big of a deal UFC 202 should be. And I want to mention that rest of the card. I want to pick those fights real quick, the other two fights that we were talking about, and then mention BJ Penn real quick. So UFC 202, I'm taking Diaz, you're taking McGregor. Rumble Johnson and Glover Teixeira. How you feeling on this one, Sean?
Oh, I'm going to hate myself if I pick wrong here. And it's really, to me, it's kind of a coin flip. And I'm going to go with Teixeira.
Well, rumble, young man, rumble, because I'm taking Anthony Johnson here, because I've been high on Anthony Johnson for
No, you haven't, and I don't think you could be. I just think it depends which one executes their game plan. Really,
it absolutely does, and I thought Johnson had the opportunity to beat John Jones in his next fight, so he should be able to take care of Teixeira. However, Teixeira has looked very, very good.
That's why I can't pick against him. Again, it's the eye test. It's the eye test, and I don't know, man. Right now, he just seems like when I think, okay, he's going to lose. It's like, what? How did he do that? Okay, he's won. All right, done.
I mean, he destroyed Rashad Evans. Yep. He destroyed Patrick Cummings, and he submitted OSP in his last three fights. So that's going to be a awesome fight to watch. I'm glad they moved that one off of a Fox card and put it on here, because that gives you a powerful main event, co-main event to go with Diaz and McGregor. Rick Story and Cowboy Cerrone. This is happening at 170 pounds. Cowboy's continuing his rise up the welterweight ranks. This is very interesting. After falling to Javier Dos Anjos back in December for the lightweight title. What do you think is going to happen here? Because Story's...
Here's the thing. Is there a title on the line?
There is no title on the line.
Donald Cerrone shows up, and we talk about Cerrone winning this one.
All right. I agree with you on that one. I think Cowboys the guy. Even though Story's got a three-fight winning streak right now. But he beat Tarek Saffiedine in May of this year, but then previously his two other fights were in 2014 wins over Leonardo Mafra and pre-McGregor Mania Gunnar Nelson. So I think it's going to be a fun fight. I think it's Cowboys' fight to lose. And I just wanted to ask you about 2 other fights on this card. We don't need to pick them because I think we'll have similar picks there. Cody Garbrandt is the main event of the Fox Sports 1 prelims against Takeo Mizugaki. What are you looking for out of Garbrandt?
To continue what he's been doing. If he's for real, you got to do what you've been doing. Get your name up there. You're finally starting to get some of these specials on. You're seeing things about him on some of these Fox 1 cards. The specials, they're actually, you're getting buzz. Keep that buzz going. Go out there and do what you do. Go out there and do what you do. And you, too, soon will be on a pay-per-view card.
Neil Magny and Lorenz Larkin, who are not happy about being on the Fight Press prelim main event. Mm-hmm. Basically because, I think it was Larkin that said this, no one's going to be there to watch them fight.
Well, here's the thing, though. So this is, but see, in a way, and I agree with them, but also there's a reason they put you there because they're hoping you can draw some people in there.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, you got to look at it that way and go, okay, so out of the cards that weren't on the fight pass, we were like the second best fight. So they want us to be the main event on the fight pass to try to build up going into the prelims on FS1.
The problem is it's at like 4:45 on a Saturday.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing to do in Vegas at the time, right?
Yeah. So
maybe some.
It's, the pool might be open, and you can watch the fight at the bar.
But see, again, this is where I think some of these guys are missing the boat. They're looking at going, "Oh, we're getting relegated." No, if you're that good of a draw, you put people in the seats no matter when you were on the fight card, and that's what UFC's looking at.
Yes, that's what they're trying to do, and I get what you're saying there, and it's a great conversation to dive into in the future regarding how fighters hate these Fight Pass stuff, but could it be the future of the business the way pay-per-view and the WWE Network and on-demand things like that have happened? And one more thing I want to mention.
And Paige Van Zandt sold out a Fight Pass card, just saying.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to mention. BJ Penn, there's more news on him. Because remember, Penn was supposed to fight, then he got in trouble. It's been delayed 3 times due to different circumstances. He had the issue with BJPenn.com that kind of got him in the news. He was suspended 6 months by USADA after he disclosed the use of an IV infusion in excess of 50 milliliters in a 6-hour period during an out-of-competition drug test on March 25th. The suspension comes to an end on September 25th. Originally, he's supposed to fight Dennis Seaver. That didn't happen because Seaver got hurt. Then Cole Miller, but then he got suspended. Now he gets, supposedly, this is according to MMAfighting.com, Ricardo Lamas. This is targeted to be the main event of UFC Fight Night 97, which will take place in Manila, October 15th. Lamas is coming off of a decision loss to Max Holloway. What do you think of BJ Penn now getting Ricardo Lamas as his first fight back?
I'm trying to think of the nicest way to say this.
Yeah, that is. I don't think you need to say anything more of that. Like, I don't know what they're thinking here, but Lamas has struggled a lot with the top featherweights. It's still very, very good. Mm-hmm. BJ Penn probably shouldn't be fighting. Actually, let me rephrase that. He shouldn't be fighting.
Yeah, there's a reason he wasn't fighting, and he's coming back.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't looking good when he was in before.
No, he was not looking good.
So what changed? All of a sudden you had this stunning revelation in your last training session, like, you know what? I'm back.
Maybe he looked at his bank account?
He saw Dan Henderson. And it's all Hendo's fault.
Blame everything on
all
Dan.
These guys. When in doubt, blame Hendo.
Yep, I like it. He's looking to bookend his career with a UFC title.
Oh, man. Would that be something if he just gets the belt and's like, I quit. I retire. I'm done.
I'm out. Done.
See ya.
I'm out. All right. And on that note, we're out, Sean. You got anything else you wanted to hit on here before we head out? I mean, Kayla Harrison winning gold in judo and turning down mixed martial arts pretty much during her press conference, a la not following the same path as Ronda Rousey. Anything else you wanted to hit on?
No, that's about it. You hit everything. Follow us, BCoyle11 at The Full Mount and at SS Sports Talk on Twitter. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Let us know if we're good, we're bad. If we're not, if we're bad, just make sure you hit up BCoyle11
Yeah, I love to deal with the hate. Bring on the haters. I love speaking to eggs on Twitter. It's awesome. Also, Facebook.com/TheFullMountMMA. Like us on there. All the stories that we put up on the website on TheFullMountMMA.com. Nice, easy into your Facebook feed. Very simple. Just click the like button. Doesn't hurt anybody. It's all good. As you mentioned, follow us on Twitter there. Subscribe to the podcast via iTunes. Rate, review us. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. All that good stuff. You can find us on YouTube. Just type in The Full Mount MMA into the search bar. It'll pop right up, where we cut up parts of the podcast when applicable and put it all together. Keep an eye on this week, Sean. We have to mention this. It's UFC 202 fight week, so we're going to have some cool fight previews. Like I mentioned, I have a feature coming up early in the week about the first Diaz McGregor fight that you definitely will not want to miss. I'm not overselling this, Sean, but I'm really overselling this. It's going to be something you'd be very interested in. And I hope our fans are interested.
Well, you've piqued my interest in it.
Cool. So, I want to thank you guys for listening. We do not know when the next podcast will be. Hopefully, we can talk about and review this fight next weekend. If not, we'll give you guys an update on that as soon as we can due to logistical standpoints. But we will be tweeting, talking about the fight, writing about the fight. If you want to get in touch with us, Twitter, best way to do it. You guys want to talk fights, we're always down for it. So thank you guys for listening. For Sean, I'm Brian. We're out.
The TFM Live Podcast is brought to you by TheFullMountMMA.com. Check us out on Twitter @TheFullMount.